poster-sized photograph of Beyonce with the even larger sign of feminism behind her, the first thing I thought was, wow, I guess feminism has been successful. And then on the other hand, I put a question mark behind that, because I say, what does that mean when Beyonce feels compelled to put this feminism word in lights at a concert? What message, what are we saying about this? And I don't really know, to be honest with you. Maybe you can answer that one, because we're like decades apart. But the thing about it is, what does it mean anymore? You know, and I think, and to underscore your point about how people become defensive immediately when you start talking about this stuff. And it's like, look, we're talking about equality here, and we're talking about forgetting about the fact that I'm a woman and maybe I want to sell lawnmowers at Sears, and Sears says, oh, you can't do that because that's kind of icky for a woman. But we're talking about getting past that, right. You know.
Well, what I appreciate about that with the feminism in big letters, it didn't say feminism, but. Yeah. I think it's, from what it sounds like, I feel like there are a lot of people out there that are trying to normalize it, and not necessarily like underplay it, but make it so that it's a part of our vocabulary as a culture that isn't automatically written off, you know? So, and I think in order to do that, to make something normal, you have to put it in big letters, neon first.
Well, Emma Thompson really helped, I think. You know, I think her speech that was on YouTube. Emma Watson, yeah. I think that really helped, just because of her age, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I just want to remind the audience again that if you want to participate in the discussion, it's easier if you come down to the microphones. If you want to stand up where you are, that's okay too. And it's kind of hard when you're in the middle of the theater to get to those areas. But great, that's all it took. Go ahead, sir.
I really enjoyed this play. I've tried to get tickets to come again with my granddaughter and wasn't able to do it. But I don't believe I've seen a piece of literature in my lifetime that comes close to what the Scarlet Letter did. It provided a whole series of people, very different, with no judgment. And if you look at this play, there were no losers, there were no winners. It took on some of the most controversial issues of our life. And I think it conveyed the kind of respect we need to get along with other people who are not us. And we seem to have a hard time doing it. If you want to see an example of a change when the baby cried, did you notice both parents got up and left?
So yeah, that was a wonderful comment. I really think that this play is a lot about getting along and understanding that men and women are different, but also that men and women are trying to be equal in different ways. Can they be that? If we look at Don's character for a second, you know, the man in the play, he for various reasons, I think that have to do with sort of self-esteem and some issues with fear of failure. He sets the bar pretty low for himself, and that frustrates Gwen because she wants him and needs him to be more of a contributor, not necessarily more of a man, but more of a contributor, right? More of a contributor in that relationship, both a financial contributor and really an emotional contributor. He's a little bit emotionally bankrupt. And Catherine wants him to be the man that she thought he was when they had a previous relationship back in grad school, and she's disappointed and surprised, and then surprised at herself because she's surprised that it's not panning out that way. But I mean, what kind of man is Don in this play, and can Don be somebody who rises to the occasion? I mean, we see in the final scene between him and Gwen, he wants to come back, but he's still hedging his bets on what he can do and what he can't do. You know, well, I'll try to get a better job, but I can't promise anything else. He won't even surrender the pornography and the marijuana, you know? So what does that really mean? I mean, are Gwen and Don going to work it out? Or are they just settling for each other once again? Anybody?
Well, I don't think I should respond to that because I spent a great deal of time thinking about it, so I'm interested in what other people think about it.
He's kind of like Peter Pan, who's fighting it all the way because he kind of has a legitimate job, but not really. you know, and that's as far as he wants to go, because again, it's about choices, and it's about the fact that, you know, she chose him to marry and the other one went to London. Those are choices, and it's okay. And Gwen can't remake him to be this traditional man because she didn't marry a guy like that. And Catherine can't make him into this dashing young guy who's got all this energy before all the pot killed the brain cells. Of course, it doesn't. But don't believe it. Shall we hijack the conversation? But I mean, it's just like you cannot look at somebody and say, you have to be what I want you to be in order for me to feel happy about myself. And I think that both women, neither one of them, I mean, one of them dodged a bullet and didn't marry the guy, and the other one didn't dodge the bullet and she did marry the guy, and he's not what either one of them wanted. So what does that say? Does she not have enough courage to get a divorce? Does she feel like she can't be secure unless there's a man, you know, in the room with her? You know, I don't know. I've always thought that a good book trumps a creepy man any day.
On that note, we'll go to our next question.
I haven't actually seen the play, so forgive me if this is out of place, but I was wondering if you guys could speak to how gender roles inform class roles also. You kind of mentioned roles other than just your gender role, but how your class role might inform things, but also the trade-offs regarding dangerous jobs, say being a fighter pilot or doing something that is traditionally male because of the male inherent strengths and whatnot. So if you can speak to that, that'd be great.
I thought that the class roles were really interesting in this. Because you have this line from Gwen, and she's talking about how hard it is for Don to provide and how he's not providing. And the line is like, we're having such a hard time keeping Julian in private school. Like, what are we gonna do when Devin is in private school too? And that was so amazing to me. Like, this is their version of poor. She uses poor to describe them in this same monologue. So I mean, they're obviously coming from a place of mild privilege, but with the same mindset that they're not. So I think that informs a lot of things in the play.
How is that mild?
Fair.
Yeah. Era.
Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Steve. I'm a passionate advocate for gender equality. I have a profile on ordainedwomen.org, if you're familiar with that. I'm a he for she, and I bring up the topic whenever I can. And what I run into a lot with women at my workplace and associates that I have is they are actually very combative towards me, saying, how dare you speak up for women? You're not a woman. And by the way, I already feel equal. I'm already equal. And so I just think that's not true. And how would you respond to that?
That's a really good question. How should men react, I guess, in these situations?
I just want to comment here, and I think I see this going on a lot, is that gender exists on multiple levels. It's an identity, it's an the interactional level, and it's the institutional level. So anyone can speak out against institutional gender inequality, low wages, any of those things, So I don't know. I think it's limited when the conversation ends up only being at the identity level, and then who can speak for who, and this is larger than this is larger than the individual. So that's a strange response, but sometimes I see that a lot of things that people get into is because they're only looking at the identity level.
Yeah. You did mention the language, which I'm going to pick up on. In that respect, I think that things have gone backwards hugely. I did my undergraduate in the early 80s, and all of the faculty there they did it a couple of different ways. They used he or she, or they would use he for a while and then she for a while, or sometimes not grammatically correct, but they would simply use they. So this was something that was happening in the early 80s, and I thought, this is great, this is so important, this is a huge advance. And then when I came to the States 20 years ago, I discovered that was held to be quite an extremist view. And I think, I think it's vitally important. I just feel like on and you two would know more about it because it's your area of study, but on some subliminal level, all of the young women hearing he constantly when we mean people of either gender, I think is hugely problematic. And I think it's problematic for young men too. And I kind of wonder that that's something that you would think by now would be absolutely it would be totally standard in all situations, really, particularly in all academic situations. What do you two think about that?
I think what you have to say is very true, because I remember reading a novel and there was a guard that they were talking about, and I didn't realize until they were using a female pronoun that it was a girl, just because of the role of guard, to me, automatically meant male. I don't know if that says anything about what you have to say, but that's my thought.
Ma'am, did you have a question? You've been at the mic a couple times.
Because the discussion has changed so much. But I do have one comment. Should I go?
Yeah, sure.
You know, all of this discussion in some ways has been from the woman's point of view, which, I mean, this is a feminist thing. But I heard you guys express the notion that, one of them escaped the bullet by not getting the loser, and the other one went back to him. And I think you're still seeing the idea that he's a loser because he's not super ambitious, and that the woman who stays home has a right to expect an ambitious guy who's going to shower her with money and comfortable life, although it sounds like with the boarding school it is actually fairly comfortable. And I guess what I'm saying is, how would this play have been changed if he had been a very successful man and the thing was about the two friends and one woman had gone on to a career and one woman had stayed home, but the issue of being bound to a loser wasn't quite there. Because he came to terms, I guess, with what he was and what he wanted, and can we accept the fact that he's not really a go-getter?
So yeah, is Don a bad person because he is who he is and he's honest about it? I mean, is he more than a plot device in the play?
I've got a comment. I don't want to come down there, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
When I think about Don and in relation to these women, I think he's at the very same crossroads that they're at, but he's responding in a different way. He's looking inside to see if he has the chutzpah or fortitude or whatever it takes to change things, whereas they're all looking at him to solve their problems. And so I kind of think that maybe, I mean, don't kick me out for being on his side, but I kind of think that maybe they need to look, yes, they have complaints about him, but they're all suffering, they're all struggling, and I think maybe they need to look within a little bit more than they are to solve their problems.
I think there's an interesting scene where Don tells Catherine, I wanted to be like you. I wanted to be, what does he call her, the hot doomsday chick or something that he calls her in the play. I wanted to be successful like you, but I got this out of college, and I got a graduate teaching fellowship at a technical college, and so he's got a long laundry list of reasons why he hasn't reached the potential that he once wanted to, and the potential everyone else is expecting him to reach. But I mean, yeah, I guess the question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of going off your comment here. The question is, do Gwen are Gwen and Catherine justified in the expectations they have with Don and the frustrations they have because those expectations aren't being met?
Let me just answer this, but I think that the playwright is making a fairly clear political point here in that Gwen hitches her, I'm going to mix my metaphors now, hitches her star, can we say that? No, that's not right. Okay. Wagon. Sorry. She hitches her wagon to him in a very traditional fashion. And then it's problematic for her because she is totally reliant on him to do all those things for her. So, I think that is one of the thing about changing people or not changing people is that if you do have the arrangement that all of those things are dependent on somebody else who you can't change, that really is perhaps one of the problems of having a division of labor whereby the economic success of the family unit resides totally with one person.
However, would Gwen, if her husband had been more successful, she, who didn't finish her graduate school education, we'll assume that she has a bachelor's degree, would she really have felt comfortable going to conferences with him in New York and Milan, or would she have felt inadequate? And is what we have here, two people who are thinking they want something more exciting, they go try something more exciting, and they realize, no, we're not big slide people. And so it's not so much about gender and what are his opportunities versus her opportunities, but they've realized they're just kind of middling, and they like it that way together.
They've settled for grade C mediocrity.
Right.
Maybe you've waited patiently, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm from the north of England, and I'm sorry I've not seen the play, but I'm loving the discussion. It's the first time I've been here, although I've been 27 years in Utah. And immediately he began speaking, and I was thinking, oh, they're talking about privileged people. Right. See, I grew up with a one-parent family, we were quite poor. I followed my mother, who was a phenomenal person, a cross between Marilyn Monroe and Lucille Ball. Looked like Sophia Loren. It was fabulous having her as a mother, but it was terrible, absolutely terrible as far as feminism and equality goes. I went through abusive marriages, and I worked incredibly hard to become who I am. So I've got some very strong opinions on this. I actually believe that we all have to become our own person. And I'm divorced for the 4th time. I was married for 25 years the last time. I know we should not be. I've been divorced 3 years. I'm a great-grandma now. I have never been so happy in my life because I am my own person. And I'm not here to just brag about it. I just, I'm giving some feedback about this. And we're talking about this guy who's supposed to be a loser. Number one, I don't think anybody's a loser. I think everybody in the relationships I was in was there for my soul's growth. And I think sometimes we stay in relationships when we're meant to get out of them. And I'm glad I got out of mine. But every single relationship taught me. And we can zone out and take prescription drugs or street drugs or alcohol or whatever. Or we can become who we really are. And so I guess that's what I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all that. Coming off of that, when you're looking down the barrel of a relationship not working or looking at separating yourself from that relationship, that is a real major crossroads, and it has a lot to do with whether we look at Alice's character in the play, and Alice is a great example where she says, basically she's saying, well, I stayed married because that was what we did, and that was the right thing to do at the time. But we know that she didn't love her husband the way that she loved her daughter, and that her husband wasn't the family type. He loved us and provided for us, she said. But that obviously that marriage, that relationship wasn't a fruitful and loving one for its entire period. And then we see Avery going through all kinds of really interesting situations with her relationship. She's exclusively hooking up exclusively. I can't figure out what that means. She's trying to explore things and keep her sense of individuality and her sense of purpose, but she also, feels that, and she and Alice feel the same way about this. They also feel that they have the tools at their disposal to manipulate men a little bit too. So, Sahara, I think this is because I think Avery has that kind of youthful spirit, and because you're about her age, it's easy to ask you the question of looking down the road with those kinds of relationships. Are you concerned? I hope this isn't too personal question. Are you concerned that you'll be in a situation where a relationship or a marriage won't work out? I mean, for someone who's been through it, it's kind of easy to look back. But what are you kind of looking forward? Because we know that Avery in the play is still very much, she knows what she doesn't want, but she's not sure she can get what she wants.
Well, first of all, that's my boyfriend right there. the statistics floating around and not be scared of a marriage or a relationship not working out, because I'm a completely different human being than I was 5 years ago. I'm a different iteration of Sahara, and I could be that way again 5 years from now or 20 years from now. In fact, I'm expecting to be, you know? So who's to say I'm going to be in the exact same position with what I want from a relationship? So yeah, of course I'm scared of that, you know? But I think, I don't think that means you should give it up. You know, I don't think life exists in either ors necessarily. That's where I stand on that. Was that the question?
Yeah, that's.
I think as long as there's humans, the manipulation knife cuts in both directions. You know, men manipulate women, women manipulate men, and it's because we're humans. Who gets the crappy end of the stick? It just depends. You know, sometimes it's like they say to you, oh, well, a great marriage is 80% sometimes and 20% the other times. And then one day it's 99% and one day it's 1%. And then your head's going, yeah, what does that even mean? You know, and I can imagine how you guys must. But I know that your boyfriend is a feminist. That's what a feminist is.
There is also another option that the play certainly puts in there, which is to be single. I mean, there's a lovely part of the play where Alice says to her daughter, you know, I wouldn't be having an existential anything. I'd stay single if I was you. And when we had a talk back, we had some interesting comments from the audience about relationships. But I do think that the play, it's not perhaps a major theme, but I think the play does put out there this idea that one can be a complete and whole person and not be in a marriage-type relationship.
On that note, I really love the relationship of Avery and Catherine at the end, when she says, like, well, what is it? Like, I'll love you. I'll love you like that. Like, and I think that's a nice image to end on, the fact that you can have love and you can have all that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in the traditional sense. You can have it with somebody that you love non-romantically, you know?
Great. Sir, go ahead.
I wanted to get up when you were talking about Dawn, and my wife wouldn't let me. She laughed, and I'm not there yet. It was my thought that Dawn portrayed a man with a pretty strong feminine nature. A lot of characteristics of women of the time. I grew up in a house where my father cared for children in the 30s and 40s, and my mother worked. My father cooked, he cared for children, and I had a brother 4 years older. He played the piano, played the music, he sang, he did not play sports. And he had an identity crisis at about age 20, about both gender and everything about him. It was really in confusion. He got it worked out. I watched all that. And I played basketball, and I went to work for the construction company because it was an easier way to go. The nicest compliment I ever got, I taught at the university many years, was one time I noticed that many of the female graduate students, I was their chair. And so I asked them why. There were no women in the department, by the way. And her answer was, well, you're the only man with a feminine nature. And it's hard to have a feminine nature in the world that men live in.
Interesting.
Any comments on that from the panel about trying to live as a man in the world with a feminine nature, the challenges of that?
I mean, I think our organizations are very much set up around control and domination rather than like cooperation, and so the organizations themselves are very much that way. As far as men that live in the world with what have been defined as feminine characteristics, they're going to probably get bullied, right? Picked on, the man box, you know, putting that, this isn't how you act, but hopefully that's changing, right? Because, I mean, although you said men and women are different, I actually think of them as very similar. We just have different social roles that we occupy and different expectations, but forgot what I was going to say there. But hopefully this binary, this idea that there are, you know, feminine qualities and masculine qualities, and hopefully that's breaking down. I don't know to what extent it is, but yeah, Landon.
Just to go on that, I mean, the fact that, you know, I'm a man who can say, oh, I love Disney movies, for example,
He does.
is testament to, you know, progress in that direction at least. But it's, you know, it's still a big deal when you've got the, you know, like the bullying aspects and making fun of aspects, like you say, but it's getting less so. It's becoming more accepted.
Something that I think is interesting is I think we live in a society where the woman is the other. And so anything feminine is therefore not masculine. So I noticed this a lot in names. If you look at names like the name Allison or Madison, I mean, I think those are traditionally thought of right now as being female names, but I mean, if you look at it, they have son at the end. You know, they used to be boy names, but if you give that name to a boy now, it's considered feminine, so therefore it's not okay, you know? So I think the structure of how even our language, it puts a man having any sort of feminine trait sort of as an outsider almost, or negative.
Interesting. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I've always had a very strong feminine side to me, and I've always been tortured for that. I would play hopscotch, I would skip rope, and I wasn't interested in the guys playing basketball. I was always, you know, I was tortured for that. Anytime you step outside the gender role, you're going to get knocked. I played both sides. I had the first marriage where I was the winner of the bread, and when she decided to go back to work and she wanted to work, I was done working by 9, 10 o'clock. I'd go get the kids from daycare, and we would go to the park, and everybody say, hey, you got stuck with the kids. I says, no, I'm a father. Yeah. I'm like, are you kidding me? That would really, yeah, it pissed me off. I mean, this is a job I love. This is, you know, I work hard, I get it done, I go get the kids. Then the second wife was a multimillionaire, and I did the stay home. And I wore her tights, and got to go store and get some tights, and get her to school, and eat the food. I got everything done. I'm sitting on the couch waiting for her to get home, and you've been sitting on your ass all day? What are you doing? Like, I'm here for you. Like, I want to make sure everything's done, and here I am. And yeah, so you step out of the gender role, you're going to get, you know, I'm not gay. But I can go bra shopping with anyone. I'm a strong man.